Good morning, everybody. Happy Monday. We have a great show for everyone today. What do we have, Krystal?
Indeed, we do. Lots to get to this morning. So our own Secretary of Defense is warning Israel of a, quote, strategic defeat in pretty blockbuster comments. We'll bring you that as well as updates out of the Gaza Strip. Ron DeSantis' campaign seems to be in total chaos. This comes as some key donor endorsements of Nikki Haley, which is sort of crucial on that side of the race, I guess. I'll break that down for you. We have also Dems in Florida acting like complete authoritarians, blocking Joe Biden's primary opponents from the ballot unilaterally. They are all speaking out, so we'll bring you those details as well. George Santos expelled, gone but not forgotten, you might say.
Not from my heart.
A movie is going to come out about him as well, and he is threatening to spill the tea on all his colleagues. So lot that's interesting to get into there. We also have Mehdi Hassan, his show at MSNBC being canceled, and a lot of debate over what exactly is going on there. I'm taking a look at a blockbuster report on exactly how Israel is waging this war differently, by the way, than the way they have approached things in the past. We'll break that down for you. We also have Scott Horton from the Libertarian Institute talking about the Netanyahu doctrine. But before we get into any of that, we got a little bit of a discount for all of you folks.
Yes, we got the holiday discount. We decided to extend it. I know that it's very helpful to all of those who want to be able to give the gift of Breaking Points. And also, if you're on the fence, you want to go ahead and sign up. So breakingpoints.com, you can become a premium subscriber. We're discounting our yearly membership, which is what helps us most, especially it's, December 2023, which means the 1 year that you're helping us out is going to help pay for all of our election coverage going into what is sure to be a completely insane and fun, maybe wild ride. So anyway,
it'll be a wild ride.
Let's put it that way.
Fun. We can't promise fun.
The road to nowhere.
It will be wild,
as we once famously called it here. So if you can help us out, we would deeply appreciate it. And then a hard turn, what's going on in Gaza?
Yeah. So let's go ahead and give you the very latest coming out of the Gaza Strip. Put these images up on the screen. So as we brought you this weekend, the temporary truce is over. The ceasefire has ended, and Israel is back to a massive bombing campaign. What you are looking at here is 6 residential towers in the southern Gaza Strip in Khan Yunis that were all taken down by a massive bombing campaign there. You can see, bodies being pulled from the rubble, children being pulled from the rubble. The horror on the look of horror on children's faces here as they look at the destruction. This particular video is a 12-year-old little girl named Alma, who is trapped under rubble as well, along with her parents, her grandparents, and her siblings. And she is asking her rescuers to rescue them first, to help them first. The very latest numbers that I saw is that in the renewed bombing campaign, 700 Palestinians were killed in a matter of 24 hours. So this is back, and it is, an all-out assault as it was before. Only the difference is now, and we can put this up on the screen. So as you'll recall, in the early days of the war, the IDF told everyone to move south, telling them this was the place to go if you wanted to be safe. Well, they have now divided the entire Gaza Strip into thousands of these little compartmented neighborhoods. And for those who are just listening, what we have up on the screen is this map that's been provided with all of these little tiny areas that have been designated. And they're effectively sending out messages of, hey, if you're in area 88, move to area 89, move to area 270. And it's caused mass chaos and confusion. This also comes, of course, after they have effectively destroyed all of the northern Gaza Strip. I mean, Gaza City is completely uninhabitable. The majority of buildings there have been damaged or destroyed. The majority of any sort of civilian infrastructure, including hospitals, apartment buildings, et cetera, damaged or destroyed. Now they are expanding into the entirety of the Gaza Strip. So listen, the South was never safe. They never completely avoided bombing the southern part of the Strip, but they are massively ramping up that campaign as they claim that Hamas leadership is predominantly in Khan Yunis right now, one of the southern cities where people fled to when they were told this was the place to go for.
That's what's happened over the last couple of days, as both sides are claiming that each other violated the ceasefire, if not entirely clear, what the actual facts on the ground are with that situation. But strategically, things are expanding pretty significantly. So Marshal Koslov actually was at the Reagan Defense Forum. He flagged this for me. He was like, this is definitely good for the show. Witness this live. The Secretary of Defense, Lloyd Austin, with honestly some extraordinary comments about the Israel campaign inside of Palestine, warning it is going to lead to a, quote, strategic defeat. Here's what he had to say.
This kind of a fight, the center of gravity is the civilian population. And if you drive them into the arms of the enemy, you replace a tactical victory with a strategic defeat. So I have repeatedly made clear to Israel's leaders that protecting Palestinian civilians in Gaza is both a moral responsibility and a strategic imperative.
So to translate that from military speak, the center of gravity, it's like a Clausewitz term that a lot of people use in the military. The point is just that you want to focus in on what are you actually trying to achieve whenever you're waging military campaigns. So the reason that he says here, the center of gravity is the civilian population is because, quote, if you drive them into the arms of the enemy, you replicate a tactical victory with a strategic defeat. This is almost exactly tracks with the U.S. campaign in Iraq. We had shock and awe. We defeated Saddam's military. It only took 3.5 weeks.
Mission accomplished.
Bush flies on the aircraft carrier and it's mission accomplished. Oh, wait, we have a massive insurgent war. The majority of our troops end up dying during said insurgency and during the civil war. We have a 20-year occupation and cost $2 trillion. We have ISIS and all the attendant problems. And basically with Lloyd Austin, who forged his entire career in CENTCOM and more, and was deeply involved in most of these campaigns, as well as the U.S. campaign against ISIS, is basically watching the exact same thing replicate itself in Gaza. And so that's really, I mean, I think his analysis is correct. I basically co-sign most of what he's saying. I don't have a problem with going after Hamas. I just think that the way they're doing it also bears out, especially you're going to be talking about in your monologue and the way the actual tactical way that this is being done. We pair it with the strategic overall goal. Ridding the Gaza Strip of Hamas, even in the near term, it seems like a nearly impossible task, especially with the way they're doing it. And the long term is going to be very, very difficult. We're probably going to be covering that all throughout the week about Hamas support, and not only inside of Gaza, but inside of the West Bank, what the day one after the campaign and all of that is going to look like. But if you pair it with some of the broader problems, not only the way that Israel is conducting itself, the big fear that I think I've always had and tried to hold here is that the rest of the region is not going to stay silent as this all continues. And that's what happened yesterday. Let's put this up there on the screen. Commercial ships, including a U.S. warship, were attacked by Houthi drones in the Red Sea. Now, many of these commercial shipping vessels were not Israeli flagged. They were U.S. Or UK flagged. The U.S. missile destroyer that was actually in the area ended up shooting down 3 of the drones. But this comes, Krystal, after there was already that Houthi hijacking of that Israeli tanker. I mean, this is one of the most vulnerable places in all of global shipping, why we have so many U.S. naval assets in the region. And these are, in the immediate term, they're drones. But don't forget, you know, this same guided missile destroyer has shot down what they say are missiles that are being shot from Yemen all the way towards Israel. Now, no way to confirm whether or not that's true, but what we can confirm is that they have kinetically engaged some of these Houthi assets. So just one of these things goes the wrong way. A U.S. sailor gets killed on the high seas. We're living in a different world. That's a different game.
Yeah, so to start with that piece, I was reading from some shipping experts on Twitter. And as you said, this particular area is really critical. And you don't have to, so far they really haven't done any damage. You know, there hasn't been significant damage. No one has been killed. I don't think anyone has been injured. So you might say, okay, what's the big deal? Well, for these shipping, for these massive, you know, cargo ships, they have to be able to insure their passage. And if you have any sort of danger in this area, then insurance rates skyrocket. And then you either have them paying, you know, massive rates of insurance, or you have them having to reroute around this area, which makes the trip much, 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 much longer. So it has a significant economic impact, even if they aren't really being that effective in doing any sort of damage. So that's on that piece. And of course, it also just shows, listen, the Houthis in Yemen, they aren't going quietly here. You still have Hezbollah hanging out there. And the greater the toll on civilian life that is inflicted in the Gaza Strip, the more fraught things will be. And of course, the more at risk our own troops in the area will be as well. Going back to the Secretary of Defense and his statement that you can replace a tactical victory with a strategic defeat by the type of war that they are waging on the civilian population. This is clear common sense. I mean, I don't think that anyone could really deny this. I don't think that the Israeli government is so stupid as to think that this is not the case. You can already see in the West Bank, because of the toll that has been taken on civilian life, guess what? You're radicalizing more people. Support for Hamas is skyrocketing in the West Bank. You can only imagine what's happening within the Gaza Strip, where you have such a massive toll on women and children and entire lives upended, the entire northern part of the Strip rendered uninhabitable. What do you think people's politics are going to be after that happens to them and their kids and their family members and everything they have ever known? What do you think that is going to lead to? So that is just obvious common sense. Now, with regard to why he's saying this, do I think it's because they're, genuinely putting real pressure on the Israelis? And you see all these like U.S. media reports, oh, the Israelis are open to the criticism. No, they're not. There is no sign that they're changing their approach whatsoever. None at all. So what is this? Number one, it's for us. It's for the domestic U.S. population. It's for the, liberals watching MSNBC. And see, look at the Biden administration. They're really trying. They're really trying. They're really good people. They're really trying. They're not just standing by and let this ethnic cleansing and genocide happen. They're actually trying to, constrain the Israelis. That's number one. And number two is so that after the fact, when this is ultimately a strategic defeat and a catastrophe for Israeli security, because you've just further radicalized an already radicalized population, created even more militants, even more terrorists, so that they can say, look, we told you so. So they can have a sort of like ass-covering moment. Those, in my view, are the two reasons for these comments from the Secretary of Defense. But make no mistake about it. Until and unless the U.S. actually wants to use our might, our dollars, condition aid, say, no, we're not just going to send you whatever bunker buster bombs you want, whenever you want it. No, we're not going to provide you blanket cover at the UN, diplomatic cover throughout the world anymore. Until we do that, they are going to continue to prosecute this war in the exact same way they have been prosecuting this war. And I have this in my monologue today, but I'll mention it now as well. The reason is because Bibi is on political thin ice, to say the least. And the population, the majority of them, some 58%, they think the IDF isn't being brutal enough. The percentage that thinks the IDF has gone too far, 1.8% of Jewish Israelis, I should say, of Jewish Israelis. 1.8% of the Jewish Israeli population thinks the IDF has gone too far. This is when you have, at the least, a 70% civilian death rate, and probably much, much higher than that. That's the rate of just women and children being massacred in this. This is with the entirety of the northern Gaza Strip being wiped out. This is the state with a complete siege, with people starving and disease spreading. They think it hasn't been brutal enough. So with Netanyahu trying to save his political ass, those are the people that he's listening to, and the most fringe far-right parts of his coalition who he's trying to keep in line. Does he care if the U.S. is hand-wringing publicly or leaking to the press? No, he doesn't care. All he would care about is if we actually used the material leverage that we have, which they show no interest in doing.
Well, I mean, I just have to go back to Daryl Cooper. Something that he said is that, look, the day after 9/11, I didn't want to hear about nuance. And I think that's very understandable. And from their perspective, too, Michael Tracy has talked about this, but, there are basically photos of one of those babies who's being held by Hamas all over Israel. I mean, if that's the level of the media environment there, you can both be nuanced in terms of, like, I hate Netanyahu for what happened, but screw all of the people who did this. And that was, let's also be real, that was the predominant sentiment here in America. They wanted to bomb the crap out of Afghanistan. That was, if we had carpet bombed all of Afghanistan, the region where bin Laden was, and we'd killed 100,000 people, I don't think anybody in this country would have sniffed whatsoever. Now, you can understand that, but you can also understand that 20, 30 years later, you can look back on some of the decisions that were made in the heat of the moment and the whole, we don't want the smoking gun to be mushroom cloud, and be like, yeah, it was pretty stupid, and we probably shouldn't fall for that next time. So the Israeli populace, I get it. I absolutely do, especially in the context of how we responded and thought and felt, I think, after 9/11. However, again, you're talking, I think, at the correct point about the U.S. and what their overall posture on this is going to be. At a certain point, I don't actually have as much of a problem with some of these comments because this buys us breathing room in the future. When the Israelis are like, hey, can you guys come clean this up and do all this peacekeeping? We're like, no, you built it, you break it, you buy it. You are the ones who are responsible. When you have a massive insurgency on your hands 5, 10 years from now and you block a peace process, it's like, that's your issue, man. We're not going to be rolling our troops and Humvees into the downtown Gaza City, Khan Yunis, or any of this other. So from that perspective, Krystal, I'm actually okay with the way that the secretary is saying it. Now, I don't disagree. I don't think it's necessarily a bad thing about conditioning aid and all that, but I honestly don't think it would make any difference. The Israelis have plenty of munitions, they got plenty of bombs, they got firecrackers, they're one of the world's most advanced militaries. Even if we didn't provide them bombs, they'd be dropping whatever they had. The U.S. influence on this is both overstated and understated. Understated to the point of what you're saying is it doesn't necessarily match the rhetoric, but at the end of the day, like, they don't need our money or our support at this point to wage war. Now, in 1980, that's a different story, but at this point, not really.
Maybe not
They're
in the
do
short
whatever
term.
they want.
Maybe not in the short term, but there are famous quotes of Israeli prime ministers, may have even been Netanyahu, basically saying the only people that matter, it's the U.S.
Yeah.
The only president in the world, the only world leader whose opinion I have to care about is the U.S. So yeah, would it be a devastating blow to Israel if we were to withhold our diplomatic cover, if we were to stop sending them the weapons that we've been sending them, stop sending them the billions of dollars in aid that we've been sending them? Yeah, that would be a real blow. Now, could they continue for some time with this war? Yeah, they have enough to continue for some time for this war. But let's not pretend like the U.S. doesn't have leverage here that we can use. I also disagree with the idea that this is buying us some window to, after they do all of this damage in Gaza, and we're actually going to get to this piece in a bit, and are pushing us to, we need these refugees resettled, and why don't you use your aid dollars to push these Arab countries around the region to take in these refugees? That there is no indication to me that we're going to buck anything that Israel wants us to do, because there's no track record of that whatsoever, certainly not from the Biden administration. And we have new reporting, put this up on the screen from The Intercept, new comments from Bibi. His goal for Gaza is to, quote, thin the population to a minimum. And by the way, little noticed fact here, but Ryan Grimm, of course, notices these things. The White House recently requested billions of dollars to support refugee resettlement from Ukraine and also from Gaza just back in October. So let me give you a few of the details here about what Bibi is up to. He has tasked his top advisor, Ron Dermer, the Minister of Strategic Affairs, with designing plans to, quote, thin the Palestinian population in the Gaza Strip to a minimum, according to a bombshell new report in an Israeli newspaper that was founded by the late Republican billionaire Sheldon Adelson. So this outlet is considered to be basically an official organ for Netanyahu, Ryan writes. It reported that the plan has two main elements. The first would use the pressure of the war and the humanitarian crisis being created by Israel's war to persuade Egypt to allow refugees to flow to other Arab countries. And the second would open up sea routes so that Israel could, quote, allow a mass escape to European and African countries. Dermer, who's originally from Miami, is a Netanyahu confidant and was previously Israeli ambassador to the U.S., enjoys close relations with many members of Congress. Oh, interesting. Let's put this next piece up on the screen. U.S. considers a plan to condition aid to regional states, Arab regional states, based on resettlement. So this new initiative submitted to Congress calls for conditioning American aid to Arab countries on their willingness to receive refugees from Gaza and effectively assist in the ethnic cleansing that Bibi Netanyahu is proposing here. The proposal was shown to key figures in the House and Senate from both parties. Longtime lawmaker Representative Joe Wilson has even expressed open support for it, while others who are privy to the details have so far kept a low profile, saying that publicly coming out in favor of the program could derail it. So they go on to say, this is the way they frame it. They frame this pushing Palestinians forever out of these lands that they'd already been forced into. They frame this in humanitarian terms, saying the only moral solution is to ensure that Egypt opens its borders and allows for the refugees to flee from the tyrant control of Hamas. They go on to say Iraq and Yemen receive an approximate $1 billion in U.S. foreign aid. Turkey receives more than $150 million. Each of these countries receive enough foreign aid and have a large enough population to be able to accept refugees, adding up to less than 1% of their population. And they even go so far as to have done the math on how many Palestinian residents of the Gaza Strip that they want to force into these different countries to quote unquote thin out the population. So apparently there is some bipartisan support here among our lawmakers to assist Netanyahu with this process.
The reason why I think this is just all fan fiction is that the Egyptians have already said, quote, "We are prepared to sacrifice millions of lives to protect our land and to make sure that nobody is coming." I actually think this would start a general war in the Middle East. There's no question in my mind that if they tried to expel millions of Palestinians or hundreds of thousands, whatever, to the various parts of these regions, it would simply collapse. And the populations themselves would not accept it. The Jordanian population, any of the Middle Eastern populations, the Saudis would almost certainly have to do something just because of the way that they're trying to keep a cap right now on all the videos and all the stuff that's spreading throughout the Arab and the Islamic world. I think really what's going to happen is that, and I think what they're really doing is an indiscriminate bombing campaign. They can think all they want till kingdom come about, oh, we're going to get these people out of there. It's just not going to happen from an international community perspective. So I'm not quite so sure to take it seriously, even if it might be their overall goal. I think there's the end state of this is pretty clear. Eventually, they're going to come to a point where they're going to stop bombing. They're probably going to level the vast majority of the infrastructure. I think the vast majority of the population will remain inside of Gaza. Actually, I don't think a large refugee settlement will come out of it simply because the Egyptians control the only other border and they're not going to let it happen. And that's when you get to the whole end state of insurgency, that's when they're going to beg us and the EU to come in and peacekeep Gaza City. They're going to have to deal with whatever comes next. I mean, obviously, I'm saying hell no to all of that, including this, by the way, because it's outrageous and it would have a detrimental impact on overall U.S. security. So they can want whatever they want, and I'm certain that there are elements of the Netanyahu cabinet. But I still fall, Krystal, on the fact is that they're trying to just punish the hell out of the population, and they're trying to kill. Or let's put it two ways. Punishing the population is secondary aim number 2. Killing Hamas is supposedly aim number 1. They're willing to accomplish 1 and 2 at the same time, but just not really willing to care and pulling the trigger based on 10, 20% type of intelligence, which I know you're talking quite a bit about in your monologue. But I still think there's a big difference between that and supposed ethnic cleansing and or genocide. I mean, these words do mean something.
It's very clear that their goal is ethnic cleansing.
Well, some of the cabinet's goal is ethnic cleansing. That's correct.
Bibi Netanyahu's goal is ethnic cleansing. Now, will they accomplish that goal? That depends on the U.S. That depends on the U.S. That depends on Egypt. Is that their goal? I don't think you can deny it at this point. Like, that is clearly their goal. Now, we can quibble over whether or not it's a genocide. I think based on the international definition and based on Israeli scholars of the Holocaust who've looked at it, I think it has. But you can certainly say, if you don't like those words, you can certainly say indiscriminate killing of civilians. I'm breaking down this report from 972 magazine, but just to give you a preview of it, when we talk about, okay, their goal is to kill Hamas, no, their number one goal is to put a quote unquote shock into the civilian population and hope that they're going to somehow turn on Hamas. We can already see that has failed. I mean, this has only increased. You look at the West Bank has already only increased support for Hamas. It's only going to increase. These are the comments from the Secretary of Defense. Radicalization and support for terror and violent resistance within the Gaza Strip. So in any case, it's important to keep an eye on what they actually want to accomplish, because Bibi is a savvy negotiator. He is a savvy politician. He thinks he can work over Joe Biden, who he says he's known for 40 years and who is, aging and frail and doesn't have all his wits about him.
I mean, that's obviously true.
Correct. He thinks he can manipulate U.S. public opinion, which he also has been very effective at doing as well. So I don't think it's so preposterous to put it off the table that some version of his ideal plan could actually come to fruition. Hey guys, if you like that video, go to breakingpoints.com, become a premium subscriber, and help us build the best independent media organization on the planet.
That's right. We're subscriber funded. We're building something new. We want to replace these failing mainstream media organizations.
So again, to subscribe, it's breakingpoints.com.